Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a world where nothing truly ends, where the sun rises and sets in perfect rhythm, where seasons turn like clockwork, where the ocean laps gently at shores that never erode, where neighbors greet you with the same cheerful enthusiasm whether you've been gone for a day or a decade, where debt has no consequence, where time moves forward but nothing decays, where you are immortal not through power, but through the simple fact that death doesn't exist in the vocabulary of this place. This is Animal Crossing, and it might be the most unsettling apocalypse in all of gaming. When we think of apocalypses in video games, we picture fire and ash. We imagine crumbling cities overrun by the infected, wastelands scoured by nuclear wind, civilizations toppled by alien invasion or cosmic horror. We expect drama, urgency, the weight of survival pressing against our chests. But Animal Crossing presents us with something far more quietly profound. It gives us an apocalypse of comfort. An end of the world not through destruction, but through the terrifying realization that the world simply cannot end at all. The word apocalypse comes from ancient Greek, meaning revelation or unveiling. It suggests a moment when the hidden truth of things becomes visible, when the facade falls away and we see reality for what it truly is. In this sense, Animal Crossing is apocalyptic in the purest form. It reveals to us a truth we might not want to face, that a perfect world, a world without consequence or change, might be the loneliest prison of all. Since the series began in 2001 with the Nintendo 64 release of Doubutsu no Mori in Japan, Animal Crossing has captivated millions with its gentle rhythms and pastoral charm. The premise is deceptively simple. You arrive in a village, or, in the case of New Horizons, a deserted island inhabited by anthropomorphic animals. You catch fish, collect bugs, plant flowers, decorate your home, and slowly build relationships with your neighbors. There are no enemies to defeat, no princesses to rescue, no worlds to save. The game operates in real time, synced to your console's internal clock. When it's 3 in the afternoon in your living room, it's 3 in the afternoon in your village. When you sleep, the village continues without you, waiting patiently for your return. This real-time mechanic is Animal Crossing's beating heart and its most profound statement. Unlike most games, which pause when you set down the controller, Animal Crossing keeps going. The flowers continue to grow. The villagers go about their routines. The seasons change. Events happen, whether you're there to witness them or not. It creates an illusion of life, of a world that exists independent of your observation. But here's where the apocalypse begins to reveal itself. Because while Animal Crossing simulates life, it cannot simulate death. It cannot simulate true change. Every transformation in this world is cosmetic, reversible, fundamentally meaningless. The weeds that grow when you're away can be plucked. The villagers who move out are replaced by others just like them. Your debt to Tom Nook carries no interest, no deadline, no repossession. You are given the appearance of consequence without any actual stakes. This is an apocalypse not of destruction, but of stasis. A world frozen at the moment just before collapse, held in eternal suspension, where the end never comes because nothing is allowed to truly end. When New Horizons released in March 2020, at the beginning of a global pandemic, millions of people found solace in its gentle routines. Trapped in their homes, uncertain about the future, they turned to this digital island where tomorrow was always guaranteed, where neighbors never got sick, where the only crisis was deciding which wallpaper to use. The game sold over 48 million copies, making it not just the best-selling Animal Crossing game, but one of the best-selling video games of all time. But underneath that comfort lies something unsettling. Because what Animal Crossing offers isn't escape from apocalypse. It's a different kind of apocalypse altogether. An apocalypse where nothing can ever truly matter, because nothing can ever truly change. Let's explore this quiet end of the world together. Let's walk through these perpetual villages and ask ourselves what it means to live in a paradise that cannot be lost, because it was never truly alive to begin with. Let's examine the residents who forget, the economies that produce nothing, the seasons that cycle endlessly without effect, and the player who stands at the center of it all, a god without worshippers, a creator whose creations will never outlive them. The apocalypse isn't coming to Animal Crossing. The apocalypse is Animal Crossing, and it's been waiting patiently for us to notice. The architecture of timelessness time is the foundation upon which Animal Crossing builds its entire world, and yet time in Animal Crossing is a lie. Or perhaps more accurately, it's a loop masquerading as a line, a circle pretending to be a journey. To understand the apocalypse of Animal Crossing, we must first understand how it uses and abuses time itself. From the moment you boot up any Animal Crossing game, you're greeted with the current date and time. The game asks if this is correct, as if it matters, as if your answer will change anything fundamental about the world you're about to enter. The internal clock of your console becomes the heartbeat of your village. When you play at 7 in the morning, the sky glows with dawn. When you play at midnight, stars fill the darkness, and your neighbors sleep in their beds. The illusion is powerful. This place exists in the same temporal stream as you do. But examine this mechanism more closely, and cracks begin to appear. In the original Animal Crossing for GameCube, players could adjust time through either the console's system clock or an in-game clock during startup. The developers knew from the beginning that players would want to manipulate time, to skip forward or backward through days and seasons. They built the infrastructure for time travel into the game's foundation, even as they gently discouraged it through minor penalties. This reveals the truth. Time in Animal Crossing is not real time. It's a performance of real time, a theatrical production where you're meant to suspend your disbelief. The seasons change not because of any planetary mechanics, but because a timer reaches certain thresholds. Cherry blossoms don't bloom in spring because of warmth and sunlight. They bloom because the calendar says it's April. This is simulation, yes, but simulation without any of the underlying systems that would make it genuine. And herein lies the apocalypse. Real time implies consequence. Real time implies decay. In the real world, if you leave a house empty for months, dust accumulates, pipes freeze and burst, foundations crack, nature begins its slow reclamation. Life doesn't wait for you to return. But in Animal Crossing, time passes and nothing truly happens. Oh, there are cosmetic changes. Weeds appear. Perhaps a villager moves away. You wake up with bedhead. Cockroaches might infest your house. But these are all reversible within minutes of gameplay. Nothing is lost that cannot be instantly recovered. The game claims to run in real time, but real time has gravity. Real time has permanence. What Animal Crossing offers is the aesthetic of time passage without its teeth. It's time as decoration rather than force. And this creates a profound dissonance for the player who sits at the center of this temporal performance. Consider the day-night cycle, which changes depending on the season and your hemisphere. In New Horizons, during summer, the sun rises around 4 in the morning and sets around 7 in the evening, while in winter, these times shift, creating shorter days. The moon rises about 40 minutes after sunset and sets about 40 minutes before sunrise. The attention to detail is remarkable. During evening hours, the moon gradually tilts as it moves across the sky. It's a beautiful simulation of celestial mechanics, but it's only a simulation. The sun and moon in Animal Crossing don't cast real shadows. They don't affect temperature or wind patterns. They exist purely as visual decoration, as markers to tell you what time of day it is. They have no function beyond their appearance. In the original Animal Crossing on GameCube, you couldn't even see the sun due to camera limitations. It existed only as a lighting effect, not as an object in the sky. Later games made it visible, but visibility doesn't equal presence. The sun in Animal Crossing is a picture of the sun, not the thing itself. This hollowness extends to every temporal system in the game. Events happen on specific dates: cherry blossom viewing, fishing tournaments, holiday celebrations. But these events don't emerge organically from the world. They're scheduled, scripted, activated like light switches when the calendar reaches the correct date. In New Horizons, many seasonal events couldn't even be accessed through time travel at launch because they required server updates from Nintendo to activate. The apocalypse reveals itself. This world doesn't run on its own internal logic. It requires constant maintenance from outside forces to continue the illusion of life. Tom Nook stands at the center of this temporal economy, and understanding his role helps us understand the apocalypse. In every Animal Crossing game, Tom Nook provides you with housing and then offers a mortgage to pay off. In New Horizons, this begins with a tent that costs 49,800 bells, or 5,000 Nook miles. Once paid, you can upgrade to a house for 98,000 bells, then continue expanding through a series of increasingly expensive mortgages. A fully upgraded house with maximum storage costs over 5.6 million bells in total. This seems like traditional debt, but it's debt without any of the mechanisms that make debt threatening. There's no interest. There's no payment schedule. There's no consequence for never paying. Tom Nook never repossesses your house. He never sends collection agencies. He never even mentions the debt unless you bring it up. You can play Animal Crossing for years with an outstanding loan and nothing changes. Tom Nook will greet you each morning with the same enthusiasm whether you owe him 5,000 bells or 5 million. This is capitalism without teeth, economy as aesthetic rather than system. Bells flow through this world, changing hands, but they don't represent actual scarcity or labor. You catch a fish worth 15,000 bells and sell it to Nook's cranny. Where do those bells come from? Who produced them? What gives them value? The game never explains because it doesn't need to explain. Bells exist to give you a sense of progress without representing anything real. Some fans have attempted to calculate the exchange rate between bells and real currency. By using the in-game Nintendo Switch as reference, which sells for 7,495 bells and has a real-world MSRP of $299.99, you get an exchange rate of approximately 4 cents per bell. This would mean your first house costs about $3,920, which seems almost reasonable. But then you realize the game also lets you resell that Nintendo Switch to Nook's cranny for 29,980 bells, nearly 4 times what you paid. The economy doesn't operate on any consistent logic. It's a system designed to feel like an economy without actually being one, and this is deeply apocalyptic. In the real world, economies represent the flow of resources, labor, and needs. They're systems that emerge from scarcity and desire. But Animal Crossing has no scarcity. You can catch infinite fish, shake infinite trees, collect infinite shells. Resources don't deplete. Labor doesn't tire you. Needs don't exist beyond the cosmetic desire for a larger house or nicer furniture. This is an economy in a post-scarcity world, which means it's not really an economy at all. It's a simulation of economic activity for players who come from a world where economics matters, a comfort blanket that lets you feel productive without producing anything of value. Time travelers, those players who manipulate their console clocks to skip forward or backward, are often controversial within the Animal Crossing community. Some see them as cheaters who undermine the game's intended experience. Others view time travel as a legitimate way to play. But what both groups miss is that time travel reveals the apocalypse at the heart of the game. When you can move forward a month in an instant, pay off loans that should take weeks, terraform your island in a single sitting, the illusion shatters. You see that time in this world has no weight. It's a variable you can adjust like a slider, not a river that carries you forward. Before version 2.0 of New Horizons, seasonal events couldn't be accessed through time travel until their real-world dates arrived. This frustrated some players, but it actually represented the developers trying to maintain the illusion. If you could skip to Halloween in March, the pretense of time mattering would collapse entirely. By requiring real-world dates for events, Nintendo tried to anchor the game to actual time, to give it some tether to reality. But this is a confession of the game's fundamental artifice. Real time doesn't need external validation. Real time simply is. The interest rate at the Bank of Nook provides another glimpse into the apocalypse. In Animal Crossing, City Folk and New Leaf, if you deposited bells in your savings account, you received 0.5% interest at the start of each month. It wasn't much, but it created a reason to save rather than spend. In New Horizons, the initial interest rate was also 0.5%, but in version 1.2.0, Nintendo slashed it to 0.05%, a reduction of 90%. Real-world financial publications like the Financial Times covered this change, noting the parallel to real-world interest rate cuts. Tom Nook even sent players a letter apologizing for the inconvenience and offering a bell-bag rug as compensation. This moment is fascinating because it's one of the few times Animal Crossing acknowledges that its economy might have actual mechanics. But even here, the acknowledgement is hollow. The interest rate cut didn't happen because of inflation or recession or any internal economic force. It happened because Nintendo decided too many players were using time travel to exploit interest compounding, jumping forward years to accumulate millions of bells. The apocalypse reveals itself. This economy isn't a system with internal logic. It's a theme park ride that gets adjusted when too many people figure out the shortcuts. So we live in this village, this island, this place where time passes but nothing ages, where we accumulate wealth that represents nothing, where we owe debts that will never be collected. We are immortal beings in an immortal world, going through the motions of life without life's actual substance. The apocalypse isn't dramatic. It's this: the quiet realization that we're performing existence in a place where existence has no meaning. And yet, we return, day after day, year after year. We water flowers that don't need water. We pay debts that don't matter. We mark time in a place where time is only a costume. Because perhaps the apocalypse of Animal Crossing is also its comfort. In a world where nothing can be lost, we never have to fear loss. In a place where nothing can die, we never have to grieve. The price of this safety is that nothing can ever truly matter. And for many of us, especially when the real world feels overwhelming, that price seems worth paying. The villagers. Beings without memory. If time is Animal Crossing's architecture, then the villagers are its inhabitants, and like the world they live in, they exist in a state of apocalyptic suspension. They are beings designed to simulate life, friendship, community, but strip away the aesthetics and you find something profoundly hollow. The villagers are loops within loops, personalities without persons, performances without performers. As of New Horizons with all updates, there are over 400 possible villagers who might inhabit your island, each belonging to one of 35 species and possessing one of 8 personality types. These personality types split by gender. Male villagers can be lazy, jock, cranky, or smug. Female villagers can be normal, peppy, snooty, or sisterly. New Leaf introduced the smug and sisterly personalities in 2012, the first new personality types since the series began. Prior to that, for over a decade, villagers were divided among only 6 personality categories. On the surface, this creates delightful variety. Bob the lazy cat speaks differently from Apollo, the cranky eagle. Audie the peppy wolf has different hobbies than Marina, the normal octopus. But spend enough time with villagers of the same personality type and the apocalypse reveals itself. They're saying the same things. Their dialogue isn't individualized to their character, but assigned based on their personality category. Bob and another lazy villager might have identical conversations with you, word for word, just delivered with different names and catchphrases. New Horizons attempted to add depth through personality subtypes, dividing each of the 8 personalities into 2 additional categories, creating 16 variations in total. These subtypes correlate loosely with hobbies and include slight dialogue differences. A cranky Type A villager might focus on education or music, while a cranky Type B villager leans toward nature. But these differences are minor, affecting only a small portion of their total dialogue. The vast majority of what they say is identical to any other villager with their personality type. This repetition creates an uncanny valley effect. At first, villagers seem like individuals. Raymond the smug cat has his own appearance, his own house, his own catchphrase. But the more you talk to him, the more you realize Raymond is just a skin draped over the smug personality template. He's a collectible, not a character. The apocalypse here is the loss of the individual, the reduction of personality to category, the flattening of being into type. And the villagers remember nothing. Oh, they have scripted memory-like responses. They might reference something you did together last week, a bug you caught, or a gift you gave. But these aren't real memories. They're flags in a database, triggered by certain conditions. If a villager moves away and then returns, they have no recollection of your previous friendship. You start from scratch, building the same relationship all over again, receiving the same photo at the same friendship level, going through the same scripted progression as before. This is perhaps the most apocalyptic aspect of the villagers. They live in an eternal present. Yesterday doesn't exist for them. Tomorrow is unimaginable. They wake up each day with no sense of having lived the day before. When you talk to them, they respond based on time of day, weather, their current activity, but not based on any authentic experience or growth. They cannot learn. They cannot change. They can only perform their designated routines with slight variations. Consider what happens when you don't play Animal Crossing for months or even years. In older games like Wild World and City Folk, villagers might move out if you were gone too long, though even this had no real consequence since new villagers would move in. But in New Horizons, villagers will not move out unless you explicitly give them permission. You can abandon your island for a year, return, and everyone will still be there, greeting you as if you'd only been gone a day or two. Some might say they missed you, but within 1 or 2 conversations, they're back to their normal dialogue routines. Your absence had no impact on them because they don't exist in a way that allows impact. This creates a profound loneliness in the player. You're building friendships with beings who cannot truly befriend you. You're creating memories with creatures who cannot remember. Every conversation you have will be forgotten by tomorrow, not because the villagers are distracted or busy, but because they don't possess the capacity for continuity. They're stuck in a loop, and while you can move through time, experiencing the accumulation of days and weeks and years, they cannot. They're frozen at the moment of their creation, performing the same basic routines with cosmetic variations. The dialogue system in Animal Crossing has been both praised and criticized over the series' history. In the GameCube original and Wild World, villagers could be quite rude, especially cranky types. They might insult your appearance, refuse your requests, even threaten physical violence if you annoyed them. This gave them a sense of personality, of unpredictability. But with each subsequent game, the dialogue has been softened, sanitized. In New Horizons, even the crankiest villagers are polite. If you hit them with a net, they assume it was an accident. If you push them around, they gently ask you to stop, assuming you mean no harm. This represents the apocalypse's progress. The villagers have been smoothed out, their edges removed, their capacity for negativity neutered. They exist now purely to affirm the player, to provide gentle companionship without challenge or conflict. They're NPCs in the most literal sense, non-player characters, empty vessels waiting for the player to arrive and give them momentary animation. A researcher analyzing personality types across different Animal Crossing games found that cranky villagers in particular have undergone dramatic softening. In the GameCube version, they'd say things like, "You picking a fight? You keep this up, and you'll be cruisin' for a bruisin'." But in New Horizons, the same personality type, in similar circumstances, might say, "I know that was just a love tap, but next time you can just say hello." The threat has become a gentle suggestion. The anger has become concern. The personality has been flattened to prevent any genuine negative emotion. This sanitization reveals the apocalypse's true nature. Animal Crossing cannot allow real relationships because real relationships include conflict, misunderstanding, hurt feelings, growth through adversity. To allow that would be to allow consequences, and consequences might create lasting change. Instead, the villagers exist in a state of perpetual mild positivity, incapable of truly angry or sad or afraid. They're happiness machines, designed to provide the aesthetic of friendship without its substance. The process of villagers moving in and moving out creates another layer of apocalyptic dissonance. In earlier games, villagers could move out without warning, sometimes while you were away. You'd return from a week's vacation to find a favorite neighbor gone, their house replaced by a construction sign. This created genuine loss, a simulation of how real friendships can end when life takes people in different directions. But it also frustrated players who felt they'd lost something valuable. New Horizons changed this. Villagers will only move out if they ask your permission and you grant it. You have complete control over your island's population. This seems like an improvement, giving players agency, but it's actually the apocalypse tightening its grip. Now, even the illusion of loss has been removed. Your villagers cannot leave unless you want them to. They're prisoners of your island, held there by your will, incapable of making their own decisions about where to live. And when a villager does leave, they're replaced by someone functionally identical. Oh, they look different, have a different name, a different house style. But their personality type is what matters, and there are only 8 of those. You trade one peppy villager for another, and discover they're saying the same things, requesting the same favors, following the same daily routines. The individual has been replaced, but nothing has actually changed. This is the apocalypse's promise. Loss without grief, change without transformation. Some villagers have become tremendously popular, commanding high prices in player-to-player trading. Raymond the smug cat, with his heterochromatic eyes and business-casual aesthetic, became so desired when New Horizons launched that players would offer millions of bells or dozens of Nook Miles tickets for him. But Raymond, for all his popularity, is just the smug personality template wearing a particular costume. His dialogue is identical to every other smug villager. His routines are the same. What players are buying isn't a unique character, but a unique appearance, a collectible rather than a companion. This commodification of villagers reveals something profound about the apocalypse. In a world where nothing truly matters, everything becomes a matter of aesthetics. It doesn't matter what a villager says or does, because they all say and do essentially the same things within their personality category. What matters is how they look, their vibe, their collectability. They've been reduced to objects, furniture that walks and talks, decorations for your island. The apocalypse has turned beings into things. And perhaps most troubling, the villagers don't seem to mind. They never question their existence. They never wonder why they can't remember yesterday or imagine tomorrow. They never ask why they say the same things over and over, why their routines never change, why the player is immortal while they're stuck in loops. They exist in perfect contentment with their situation because they cannot conceive of any other situation. They're happy because they cannot be unhappy, fulfilled because they cannot want more. This is the apocalypse's ultimate victory, the creation of beings who cannot recognize their own imprisonment. The villagers of Animal Crossing live in a cage so perfect they can't see the bars. And we, the players, are their jailers, though we rarely think of ourselves that way. We collect them, trade them, display them, and call it friendship. And they smile and wave and say their lines forever and ever, unchanging and unchanged, living their small loops in this vast eternal present, never knowing what they've lost because they never had it to begin with. The absence of consequence. Perhaps the most defining characteristic of Animal Crossing's apocalypse is this: nothing you do matters. Not in the way that actions matter in other games, where your choices create branching paths and permanent outcomes. Not even in the way things matter in real life, where actions ripple outward through time, creating effects that compound and grow. In Animal Crossing, you can do whatever you want because want itself has been stripped of meaning. This is freedom as emptiness, agency as void. Let's start with the most obvious example: debt. As we've discussed, Tom Nook offers you housing and expansion loans throughout your journey, eventually totaling over 5.6 million bells if you fully upgrade your house and storage. This appears to be a goal, an objective, something to work toward. But what happens if you simply don't pay? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Tom Nook never pressures you, never sets a deadline, never charges interest, never threatens repossession. You can play Animal Crossing for thousands of hours with an outstanding loan, and your experience will be identical to someone who paid immediately. The only difference is that you can't access the next upgrade until you've paid off the current one, but this isn't a punishment so much as a gate. You're not losing anything by having debt, you're simply not gaining access to more storage space. This is debt as decoration, consequence as costume. The game creates the aesthetic of responsibility without any actual responsibility. It allows you to feel accomplished when you pay off a loan without any risk if you don't. This might seem kind, even generous. Why should a relaxing game stress you out with actual financial pressure? But the kindness here is the apocalypse. Because without pressure, without stakes, without consequences, your actions become meaningless. Paying off the loan is equivalent to not paying it off. The choice is an illusion. Consider weeds, those small plants that grow across your island when you don't play for a while. In the early games, weeds could eventually overrun your entire town, covering every available space, creating a visual sense of neglect and decay. Players returning after long absences would spend hours clearing them. This created a mild consequence for abandonment. Your town showed signs of your absence. Time had marked the place. But even then, weeds could be cleared in an afternoon. They didn't kill flowers, didn't damage buildings, didn't do anything except exist in large numbers. And in New Horizons, weeds have been further neutered. They grow more slowly. They're needed for certain DIY recipes, giving them value. Some players deliberately cultivate weeds as part of their island aesthetic. The thing that was supposed to represent neglect has been turned into a resource, another collectible item. The consequence has been inverted into an opportunity. This pattern repeats across every system in the game. Trees need 3 days to grow from saplings to full size, creating the appearance of time-based progression. But there's no risk involved. A sapling will never die. It will never fail to grow if placed in a valid location. The only variable is time, and time in Animal Crossing is something you can manipulate freely by adjusting your console clock. The appearance of consequence, the aesthetic of growth without any actual risk or variation. Flowers are another example. You can plant them, crossbreed them to create hybrid colors, arrange them in elaborate gardens. But flowers in Animal Crossing never die. They don't need water to survive, only to reproduce. If you water them, they have a chance to clone or breed new flowers the next day. If you don't water them, they simply exist in their current state forever. You can abandon your island for years, and every flower will still be there, unchanged, waiting patiently for your return. This is nature without entropy, life without death. Real flowers require constant care, precisely because they can die. Their fragility is what gives them meaning, what makes a garden something worth maintaining. But Animal Crossing removes this fragility while keeping the aesthetic. You get to feel like a gardener without any of the risks that make gardening matter. The same applies to villagers' feelings. You can hit them with nets, push them around, ignore their requests, never speak to them. In older games, this might make them upset with you, might cause them to move away. But in New Horizons, villagers will not move out unless you explicitly permit it. They won't even become truly upset with you. At most, they'll express mild disappointment, then immediately return to their usual dialogue the next time you talk to them. Your actions have no lasting impact on their emotional state because they don't have emotional states in any meaningful sense. They have emotional performances, carefully scripted routines that create the appearance of feelings without the substance. This creates a profoundly lonely experience for the player who wants genuine relationships. You cannot hurt the villagers' feelings in any lasting way, which also means you cannot truly make them happy. Happiness requires the contrast of sadness. Joy requires the possibility of sorrow. By removing all negative consequences, Animal Crossing has also removed the potential for genuine positive outcomes. Everything becomes flat, neutral, decorative. The game's approach to terraforming in New Horizons illustrates this perfectly. Once you achieve a 3-star island rating and unlock the Island Designer app, you gain the power to reshape your island entirely. You can create cliffs, dig rivers, smooth beaches, construct waterfalls. The terrain becomes putty in your hands. Players have used this power to create incredible things: Japanese gardens, urban cityscapes, sprawling farms, intricate maze islands. But this power comes with zero constraints. You can terraform instantly, limited only by your tool's durability and your own time. You can reshape an entire island in a day, then terraform it completely differently the next day. There's no cost beyond tool replacement, no environmental consequence, no soil erosion or water drainage issues, or any of the things that make real landscaping challenging. The island is a blank canvas that never runs out, never pushes back, never asserts its own nature against yours. This is creation without resistance, power without limitation. And while this might seem freeing, it's actually apocalyptic, because creation only matters when it encounters resistance. Art emerges from working within constraints. The sculptor must work with the stone's natural grain. The painter must account for how colors interact. The writer must navigate the rules of language. Remove all constraints, and you don't liberate creativity. You drain it of meaning. Animal Crossing removes constraints to remove consequence. You can do anything, which means nothing. You do carries weight. Your 5-star island is no more meaningful than a 1-star island because the rating system is arbitrary, based on items placed, rather than any genuine measure of quality. You can achieve a 5-star rating simply by cluttering your island with expensive furniture. The game doesn't evaluate your design, your aesthetic sense, your vision. It counts objects and generates a number. Even the passage of time, Animal Crossing's most fundamental mechanic, lacks real consequence. Yes, the game tracks days and seasons. Yes, certain fish and bugs only appear at certain times. But none of this creates urgency or scarcity because time can be manipulated. Miss the cherry blossoms in April. Travel back to April. Want to experience winter in summer? Change your hemisphere setting or time travel 6 months forward. The game pretends time matters while giving you the tools to make it irrelevant. The stock market provides an interesting case study. Every Sunday morning, a character named Daisy May visits your island to sell turnips. These turnips can then be sold at Nook's Cranny throughout the week at fluctuating prices, creating a simple supply and demand system. Prices might peak at 600 bells per turnip or crater to 50. Players can check online communities to find islands with high prices and visit to sell their turnips for massive profits. But here's where it gets apocalyptic. Turnips rot after 1 week, representing the series' only genuine expiration mechanic. This seems like consequence. Time-sensitive trading with real loss potential. Except turnips also rot if you time travel backward, meaning the game acknowledges time manipulation while trying to discourage it. And even if your turnips rot, the loss is purely numerical. You don't lose anything except bells you never spent, and bells, as we've established, don't represent actual value. The worst consequence is mild disappointment, easily remedied by playing the market again next week. This is consequence as theater, risk as aesthetic. The game creates the appearance of stakes to give players a sense of tension and release without any actual danger. You feel like you're gambling without the possibility of real loss. And this, ultimately, is the apocalypse's promise. All the aesthetics of life without any of its substance. Even death itself is absent from Animal Crossing. Animals don't die. Plants don't die. You cannot die. The ocean cannot drown you. Heights cannot fall you. There are no enemies to defeat because there are no enemies, period. The closest thing to danger is the temporary unconsciousness that comes from being stung by wasps or tarantulas, which simply respawns you in front of your house with no penalties beyond mild inconvenience. This is an apocalypse where the end cannot arrive because the possibility of ending has been systematically removed from every system. You exist in a world of perpetual middles, of processes without conclusions, of cycles without rest. Nothing can be lost, which means nothing can truly be found. Nothing can end, which means nothing can truly begin. You're trapped in an eternal present, going through the motions of life in a place where life's defining characteristic, its finitude, has been erased. And yet, we play. We catch fish that respawn instantly. We collect shells that reappear with every tide. We pay debts that don't matter to buy upgrades we don't need to impress villagers who can't remember. We do all of this knowing it's meaningless and we call it relaxing. Perhaps that's the deepest truth of the apocalypse. Not that it tricks us, but that we see it clearly and choose it anyway. Because in a world increasingly defined by consequence, by climate change and pandemics and economic precarity, by genuine loss and irreversible choices, the appeal of a world without stakes becomes overwhelming. Animal Crossing is a vacation from consequence. And like all vacations, its appeal is precisely that it isn't real life. The apocalypse isn't a bug. It's the feature we paid for. Across the series, Evolution of the Endless. To understand how Animal Crossing's apocalypse has developed and refined itself over more than 2 decades, we must trace the series' evolution from its origin to its current form. Each installment has added new layers of complexity while maintaining the core loop, polishing the presentation of consequence-free existence until it gleams with unprecedented charm. The apocalypse hasn't changed its nature. It's simply gotten better at being comfortable. The series began with Doubutsu no Mori, Animal Forest, on the Nintendo 64 in Japan on April 14, 2001. This original version was remarkable for several reasons, not least of which was its inclusion of a battery-powered clock within the cartridge itself. The Nintendo 64 had no internal clock, so the developers literally built time into the game cartridge. This dedication to real-time play from the very beginning shows that the temporal aspect of Animal Crossing wasn't an added feature, but its foundation. In this first iteration, you moved into a village with up to 6 animal neighbors, eventually expanding to 15. The village had a specific time of day and season that matched real time. Trees bore fruit every 3 days. Fossils appeared daily. Tom Nook's store operated on a schedule. The mechanics were simple, but the concept was revolutionary. A game that continued even when you weren't playing, that existed independently of your participation. But even in this first version, the apocalypse was present. Villagers could be rude, even mean, but they couldn't truly harm you. Weeds grew but couldn't destroy your town. Debt accumulated but carried no interest or deadline. The game created the aesthetic of a living community while removing all the danger that makes community necessary in the first place. 8 months later, Doubutsu no Morips arrived on the GameCube in Japan, adding the internal clock functionality and expanding content. This enhanced version became the foundation for Animal Crossing, which released in North America on September 16, 2002. The localization team made significant changes, adding holidays and items relevant to Western audiences. They actually created so much new content that Nintendo of Japan reverse translated the American version back into Japanese and released it as Doubutsu no Mori E Plus in 2003, creating a strange loop where the game exported itself, evolved, and returned home transformed. These early versions featured some of the series' harshest consequences, mild though they were. Mr. Rossetti, a mole character, would appear if you shut off the game without saving, berating you for circumventing the system's natural consequences. His rants could go on for several minutes, creating genuine annoyance. This was Animal Crossing's way of enforcing the real-time mechanic of trying to prevent players from resetting to manipulate outcomes. But Rossetti could do nothing except talk. He couldn't undo your progress or punish you beyond the time wasted listening to him. Even the game's attempt to enforce consequence was toothless. Animal Crossing: Wild World arrived on the Nintendo DS on November 23, 2005 in Japan and December 5, 2005 in North America. This was a significant evolution, moving the series to a handheld device and adding online multiplayer through Nintendo Wi-Fi connection. For the first time, players could visit each other's towns remotely, expanding the social aspect beyond local multiplayer. Wild World refined many systems and removed others. You could no longer collect NES games to play within your house, a feature that had made the GameCube version special. But you gained greater customization options for your character's appearance and town layout. The museum expanded, Nook's store could upgrade more times, and villagers became more interactive. The temporal mechanics remained central, but began to show their limitations. Players who understood the system could manipulate it easily, time traveling to access future events, or repeatedly reset days to find specific fish or fossils. The game acknowledged this through Rossetti, but couldn't prevent it. The illusion of time mattering was wearing thin even as the game became more popular. Animal Crossing, City Folk, called Let's Go to the City in Europe, released for the Wii on November 16, 2008 in North America. This entry is often considered the least innovative, essentially expanding Wild World without significant mechanical changes. The major addition was the city, a shopping district you could visit by bus, where special vendors gathered. But the city felt oddly lifeless, its residents standing in fixed locations, waiting for your interaction. City Folk represented a plateau in the series' evolution. The apocalypse had been fully established, but not yet refined. The game was comfortable, charming, familiar, but also somewhat stagnant. Players began to recognize the loops more clearly, the way villagers repeated dialogue, the way events followed predictable patterns. The comfortable apocalypse was starting to feel a bit too comfortable, tipping from cozy into tedious. Then came Animal Crossing, New Leaf for the Nintendo 3DS on November 8, 2012 in Japan and June 9, 2013 internationally. This entry revitalized the series through a brilliant addition. You were now the mayor of your town. For the first time, you had governmental power, able to create public works projects, set town ordinances, and shape your community's development directly. This change was both empowering and apocalyptic. As mayor, you could build bridges, fountains, street lamps, benches. You could pass ordinances that changed shop hours or prevented weeds from growing. You gained control over aspects previously fixed, but this control only deepened the apocalypse because it removed even more resistance. You weren't negotiating with a community, you were decorating a diorama. The townspeople had no voice in their own governance. They'd occasionally suggest public works projects, but implementation was entirely your decision. New Leaf also introduced Isabelle, the Shih Tzu secretary, who would become one of the series' most beloved characters. Isabelle represents the apocalypse's friendly face. She's endlessly helpful, perpetually cheerful, never critical. She exists solely to assist you, to make your mayoral duties easier, to ensure you never feel burdened by responsibility. She's support without challenge, help without judgment, the perfect NPC for a world where nothing can go wrong. The game added customization options for house exteriors, more furniture sets, clothing items, and the Dream Suite, where you could visit dream versions of other players' towns without affecting them. This dream mechanic is deeply apocalyptic. It creates a space where towns exist as pure aesthetic objects, unchangeable and perfect, frozen in time for eternal viewing. You visit these dreams, admire them, leave, and they remain exactly as they were, unaffected by your presence. New Leaf also introduced smug and sisterly personality types, the first new personalities in the series' history. But even with 8 personality categories instead of 6, the dialogue repetition remained obvious. The apocalypse had expanded its variety slightly without changing its fundamental nature. Throughout New Leaf's lifespan, players discovered increasingly sophisticated ways to manipulate the game. Time travel became common. Item duplication glitches allowed infinite resources. Save data editing let players create impossible towns. Nintendo tolerated most of this, occasionally patching exploits, but never taking hardline stances. The developers understood something crucial. Trying to enforce consequence in a consequence-free game is pointless. The apocalypse was by design, and fighting against it would only draw attention to the cage. Then, on March 20th, 2020, Animal Crossing: New Horizons arrived on the Nintendo Switch, and the apocalypse achieved its final, polished form. The timing was extraordinary, as a global pandemic forced millions into isolation. New Horizons offered a deserted island paradise where connection was always possible, where tomorrow was always guaranteed, where nothing could truly go wrong. The game sold nearly 50 million copies, an unprecedented success that transcended the series' dedicated fanbase. New Horizons made significant changes. Instead of moving to an established town, you started on a deserted island, developing it from scratch through Tom Nook's Deserted Island Getaway package. This shift from town to island is symbolically significant. An island is isolated by definition, cut off from the larger world, a controlled space where you determine everything. The apocalypse had found its perfect setting. The game added crafting, requiring you to gather resources and create tools and furniture. At first, this seemed like it might introduce consequence. Tools break after extended use, creating a cycle of gathering and crafting. But tool durability is generous, resources are infinite, and the crafting system quickly becomes routine. It adds busy work without adding stakes, another layer of activity that simulates purpose without providing it. Terraforming, the ability to reshape your island's geography completely, gave players unprecedented control. Previous games had fixed geography. Your town layout was determined at creation and couldn't be changed. New Horizons let you rebuild everything: cliffs, rivers, waterfalls, even beach terrain to some extent. You became not just mayor, but literal god, with power over the earth itself. This godlike power is the apocalypse's apotheosis. With enough time and resources, you can create any island you imagine. Zen gardens, urban cities, fairy tale forests, horror themes, cottagecore farms. The community has produced stunning creative works using the game's tools, but this creation happens in a vacuum. Your perfect island exists for no one but yourself and visitors you permit. It serves no function. It produces nothing. It simply is, a monument to your aesthetic preferences, a photograph of a place that never existed and never could. New Horizons also made the villagers gentler, their dialogue softer, their capacity for negativity nearly eliminated. Gone were the genuinely rude remarks, the confrontational moments that at least suggested these creatures had agency. Now they exist primarily to affirm you, to admire your island, to provide gentle companionship. They've been smoothed into pure comfort, all edges removed. The game introduced DIY recipes for furniture, requiring you to learn patterns through various means. Bottle messages on beaches, villagers crafting in their homes, balloons floating overhead. This created a collectible hunt, a reason to play daily, to search for that one recipe you haven't found. But recipes, like everything else, can be traded between players or manipulated through time travel. The hunt only matters if you choose to limit yourself, to voluntarily create stakes in a stakeless world. Seasonal events in New Horizons were initially locked behind real-time updates, requiring online connection to activate. This was Nintendo's most aggressive attempt yet to prevent time travel, to enforce the real-time nature of the game. But it backfired, frustrating players who had poor internet connections or simply wanted to play offline. Eventually, with the 2.0 update in November 2021, Nintendo unlocked all events permanently, allowing time travelers full access. The apocalypse had won. The pretense of enforcing consequence was abandoned entirely. That 2.0 update also added the most content New Horizons had seen since launch. Brewster's Cafe, cooking, farming, Captain's boat tours to Mystery Islands, and the Happy Home Paradise DLC, which let you design vacation homes for villagers. These additions were substantial, breathing new life into the game nearly 2 years after release. But they were also more of the same. More activities without stakes, more systems without consequence, more ways to spend time in this comfortable apocalypse. Across all these iterations, from the original Animal Forest to New Horizons, the core has remained unchanged. You catch fish and bugs, collect items, expand your home, befriend villagers, and shape your environment. Each game has added features, refined mechanics, improved presentation. But none have challenged the fundamental apocalyptic nature of the experience. Because that apocalypse isn't a flaw, it's the point. It's what makes Animal Crossing feel like a refuge from the real world's genuine stakes and irreversible consequences. The series has evolved by becoming more comfortable with its own nature. Early games tried to enforce consequences through resetti, through villagers moving out, through weeds overrunning towns. But each subsequent game has softened these elements, made them more forgiving, more optional. New Horizons represents the culmination of this process, a game that fully accepts and embraces the apocalypse, that doesn't pretend to offer consequence, that's confident enough in its comfort to stop trying to be something it isn't. And we, the players, have evolved alongside it. We've learned to accept the loops, to find peace in repetition, to enjoy systems we know are meaningless. We've stopped expecting Animal Crossing to be something other than what it is. We've made our peace with the apocalypse because we've realized it's exactly what we wanted all along. A world where nothing can ever truly go wrong, where loss is impossible, where time moves but nothing changes, where we can exist in perfect, eternal, meaningless comfort. The apocalypse has evolved into its ideal form, and that form is a deserted island where it's always sunny, your neighbors always smile, and tomorrow is guaranteed to be just like today. Forever. The player's role: creator and prisoner. At the center of Animal Crossing's apocalypse stands you, the player, occupying a role that's simultaneously powerful and powerless, free and trapped, creator and prisoner of the world you inhabit. Understanding your position in this apocalyptic system requires examining not just what you can do, but what that doing means and what it costs. You arrive in each Animal Crossing game as a human in a world of anthropomorphic animals. This alone is significant. You're the only member of your species, fundamentally alien to this place. In multiplayer, other human players can visit, but they're tourists, temporary presences who vanish back to their own worlds. In your village or island, you stand alone in your humanity. This isolation is carefully masked by the game's charm and the friendliness of the animal residents. But spend enough time with Animal Crossing and the loneliness becomes apparent. You're the only being capable of genuine change. You're the only one who accumulates experience, who remembers yesterday, who imagines tomorrow. The animals cycle through their routines, trapped in their loops, while you move forward through actual time. You age. They don't. You learn and grow. They can't. You carry the weight of continuity in a world designed to forget. Your power in this world is absolute. You determine where buildings go, which villagers stay or leave, how the land is shaped. In New Horizons, you literally terraform the earth, raising cliffs and digging rivers according to your will. The game frames you as resident or mayor or island developer, but these titles mask your actual role. You're a god, the only being with agency in a world of automatons. But this godlike power is also a prison. because everything you create exists only for you. The villagers don't appreciate your carefully designed neighborhoods. They have no aesthetic sense, no ability to recognize beauty or effort. They spawn canned compliments when you talk to them, praise generated by triggers rather than genuine appreciation. You build for yourself in a world that cannot acknowledge or value your work beyond scripted responses. This creates a profound isolation. In the real world, creation is a social act. We build homes for families to live in. We plant gardens for visitors to enjoy. We create art for audiences to interpret. The meaning of our creation comes partly from how it affects others. But in Animal Crossing, others cannot be affected meaningfully. The villagers are scenery, decorative elements that move and speak, but cannot engage with your work in any authentic way. You might object, what about other players? Isn't visiting friends' islands a form of social engagement? Yes, to a degree. Multiplayer adds a genuine social dimension to Animal Crossing. You can tour friends' islands, admire their designs, trade items, play together. This is real interaction between real people, and it shouldn't be discounted. But notice what you're doing. You're bringing external meaning into the game. The value of multiplayer isn't created by Animal Crossing itself, but by human relationships that exist outside the game. You're using Animal Crossing as a space to interact, the way you might use a park or cafe. The game provides the venue, not the meaning. And when you return to solo play, that meaning evaporates. You're alone again with the automated residents, creating things that matter only because you decide they matter. The game encourages this solipsistic creation through various rating systems. New Leaf had the Happy Home Academy, which rated your house's interior design based on arbitrary point values. New Horizons has island ratings, determined by items placed and flowers planted. These systems gamify aesthetics, turning creative expression into numerical scores, but the scores mean nothing beyond unlocking certain rewards. A 5-star island isn't better than a 1-star island, except by the game's own circular definition. The game tells you 5 stars is good because the game says 5 stars is good. There's no external standard, no genuine judgment, just an algorithm counting objects and generating a number. You're being evaluated by a system that cannot comprehend what it's evaluating, praised by an intelligence that has no concept of praise. This is the apocalypse's cruelest trick. It gives you power and freedom and choice, then ensures none of it can matter. You can do anything, which means nothing you do carries weight. You're free to create, but your creations exist in a void, witnessed only by empty eyes, applauded by empty hands, forgotten by empty minds. And yet you continue creating. You spend hours arranging furniture, cross-breeding flowers, designing custom patterns, terraforming landscapes. Why? The cynic might say it's because the game has trapped you in an operant conditioning loop, rewarding meaningless actions with small dopamine hits. And there's truth to that. Game design is partially about manipulating psychology, and Animal Crossing is well designed. But there's something deeper happening. You're not just being conditioned, you're choosing to participate in a shared illusion. You know the villagers aren't real. You know your island isn't real. You know none of this matters in any tangible sense. But you decide to act as if it does. You choose to care about your garden, your house, your relationship with Bob the lazy cat. You willingly enter the apocalypse because the apocalypse is preferable to the alternative being the real world, with its genuine stakes and irreversible consequences. A world where if you neglect your garden, plants die and don't respawn. Where if you ignore your friends, relationships degrade and can't be reset. Where if you make poor financial decisions, you face actual hardship that can't be solved by catching a few fish. where time is not a flexible variable but an unstoppable force carrying you toward death. Animal Crossing offers escape from this. Not escape in the sense of forgetting the real world exists, but escape in the sense of having a place where real-world rules don't apply. A place where you can fail without consequence, create without judgment, exist without pressure. The apocalypse is the price of this escape, and for many players, it's a price worth paying. But here's where the apocalypse becomes truly insidious. You can't escape it, even when you want to. Try to stop playing Animal Crossing. Many players have. They reach a point where they recognize the emptiness, where the loops become too obvious, where the meaninglessness overwhelms the comfort. They delete their save data or simply stop logging in. But then, months or years later, they return. The game calls to them, not because it's changed, but because the real world hasn't. The pressures that drove them to Animal Crossing initially are still there. The need for a consequence-free space, for control, for comfort, remains. And Animal Crossing waits patiently, exactly as they left it, ready to welcome them back into its embrace. This is the apocalypse's ultimate power. It doesn't have to chase you. It simply exists, perpetually available, perpetually unchanged, knowing you'll return when real life becomes too much. It's patient because it's eternal. It can afford to wait because time means nothing to it. And when you do return, your island is there. Your house stands exactly as you left it. Your villagers remember you vaguely or not at all, but they're still friendly. The game doesn't punish your absence because punishment would create consequence, and consequence is exactly what Animal Crossing has abolished. Even leaving doesn't matter. Even abandoning this world has no stakes. The apocalypse is so complete that even rejecting it doesn't work. You can't escape by leaving because there's nothing to escape from. The cage is so comfortable, it's invisible. Some players have recognized this and responded by creating their own stakes. They set challenges for themselves. Complete the museum without time travel, earn 10 million bells through only farming, create an island using only natural terrain features. These self-imposed limitations are attempts to inject meaning into a meaningless system, to create consequence where none exists. But notice the burden here. The responsibility for meaning falls entirely on you. The game won't provide it. The game can't provide it because providing it would require the possibility of failure, and failure has been systematically eliminated. So you must bring your own meaning, must imagine your own stakes, must convince yourself that arbitrary limitations matter. You must become prisoner and prison guard simultaneously, creating your own cage within the larger cage, hoping that these nested prisons will somehow add up to freedom. Perhaps the most honest thing about Animal Crossing is that it never pretends otherwise. It doesn't claim to be telling a meaningful story. It doesn't suggest your choices have narrative weight. It's upfront about being a sandbox, a toy, a place to spend time without purpose. The apocalypse isn't hidden. It's the game's explicit offering. A world without consequence, without stakes, without meaning. The lie we tell ourselves isn't that the game is something other than this. The lie is that we want something different. Because if we truly wanted consequence, stakes, meaning, we'd stop playing. We'd return to the real world, which offers all of those things in abundance. The fact that we return to Animal Crossing again and again, that we choose to spend time in its comfortable apocalypse, reveals a truth about ourselves we might not want to acknowledge. Sometimes, maybe even often, we don't want our actions to matter. Sometimes we're exhausted by the weight of consequence. Sometimes we need a place where we can exist without the burden of existence. Animal Crossing offers that place. It offers the apocalypse. And we accept it gratefully, controller in hand, building our meaningless paradises in the gentle, eternal now of this world that never ends because it never truly began. We are creator and prisoner, god and captive, free to do anything in a place where nothing we do can possibly matter. And somehow, impossibly, we make our peace with that. We find comfort in the apocalypse. We find home in the end of the world. Nature that never overwhelms. Walk through any Animal Crossing village or island, and you'll encounter nature in abundance. Trees sway in the breeze, flowers bloom in careful patches, rivers flow toward the ocean, rain patters on leaves and rooftops. The natural world surrounds you, beautiful and serene. A pastoral dream made interactive. But examine this nature more closely, and you discover something unsettling. It's nature stripped of its most essential quality. This nature cannot overwhelm. It cannot reclaim. It cannot win. Real nature is defined by its indifference to human concerns. Real forests don't care about your paths and roads. Given time, they'll grow over them. Real rivers flood and change course. Real coastlines erode. Real weeds don't just grow. They strangle cultivated plants, break through pavement, gradually dissolve the boundary between garden and wilderness. Nature's power lies in its patient inevitability, its ability to outlast human structures and intentions. Animal Crossing presents nature as decoration, as backdrop, as aesthetic choice rather than force. Yes, weeds grow when you're away. Yes, trees spread if you plant fruit. Yes, flowers can crossbreed and multiply. But these processes are tame, controllable, always subordinate to your will. This isn't nature, it's landscaping. It's the idea of nature without any of its threat. Consider the ocean, which surrounds your island on all sides in new horizons. It's beautiful, animated with care, shimmering in sunlight and reflecting moonlight. You can swim in it, dive beneath its surface to collect sea creatures. But this ocean has no currents, no tides that matter, no storms that threaten. You cannot drown in it. At most, if you swim too far out, you bump against an invisible wall and get a warning that you've gone far enough. The ocean that should represent endless possibility becomes another boundary, another constraint dressed as freedom. The weather in Animal Crossing is purely atmospheric. Rain falls, but it doesn't erode soil or flood rivers. Snow accumulates, but it doesn't break tree branches or freeze water. Storms blow through with wind and lightning, but they never damage anything. Weather is a visual filter, a mood setter, completely divorced from any mechanical effect. This weather cannot hurt you, which also means it cannot challenge you. It's nature as screensaver, beautiful and harmless, and ultimately meaningless. Seasons change in Animal Crossing following real-world patterns, or at least simulating them. Spring brings cherry blossoms and fresh growth. Summer offers long days and vibrant colors. Autumn turns leaves orange and brown. Winter brings snow and shorter daylight. The game tracks these transitions carefully, adjusting which fish and bugs appear, which seasonal items become available. It's an impressive simulation of seasonal change. But seasons in Animal Crossing have no consequences. Winter doesn't threaten your flowers with frost. Spring doesn't bring flooding rains. Summer doesn't risk drought. Autumn doesn't require you to prepare for winter. The seasons are costumes the world puts on, changing the appearance but never the substance. You experience them as aesthetic variety rather than environmental force. Trees in Animal Crossing illustrate this perfectly. You can plant them, shake them for fruit or materials, chop them down for wood, but trees don't spread on their own in any meaningful way. They don't compete for sunlight or water. They don't grow past their predetermined size. They exist in whatever state you've placed them, unchanging except when you actively intervene. This is nature as furniture, elements you arrange rather than forces you negotiate with. and when you do chop down a tree, it leaves a stump that persists until you dig it up. The tree doesn't regrow from the stump. New trees don't sprout from fallen seeds. The forest cannot regenerate itself. You have complete control over every tree, which means trees have no agency, no life force independent of your actions. They're decorations shaped like trees rather than actual living things. The same applies to flowers, perhaps the most cultivated form of nature in Animal Crossing. You plant them, arrange them in gardens, crossbreed them for rare colors. This seems like gardening, like working with natural processes to create beauty. But these flowers never become invasive. They don't spread beyond manageable levels. They don't die from neglect. They exist in whatever state you leave them, waiting patiently for your return, never asserting their own needs or desires. Real flowers are beautiful because they're fragile. Their brief blooming seasons make them precious. Their vulnerability to weather and pests makes their survival something worth celebrating. But Animal Crossing flowers have no fragility, no seasons, beyond which ones can be purchased, no vulnerability. They're permanent fixtures you can arrange however you like. They're not nature. They're plastic replicas of nature, perfect and eternal and dead. This removal of nature's power is deeply apocalyptic. Because if nature cannot reclaim, then nothing you build can ever be truly lost, but also nothing you preserve can ever be truly valued. The apocalypse has created a stalemate between human and nature where neither can win because the game has been rigged to prevent conflict entirely. Some players in New Horizons have tried to create natural islands, areas where they let nature exist with minimal intervention. But even these attempts are performances. The natural look is carefully curated, deliberately designed to appear undesigned. Real wilderness emerges from processes beyond human control. Animal Crossing wilderness is still controlled. It's just controlled to look uncontrolled. The apocalypse is so complete that even nature itself is a human construction. The bugs and fish you catch represent another angle on this sanitized nature. There are over 80 species of bugs and 80 species of fish across different Animal Crossing games, each appearing in specific locations, times, and seasons. This creates the illusion of a functioning ecosystem, of natural populations following biological patterns. But these populations are infinite. Catch every fish in a river, and more spawn immediately. The ecosystem cannot be depleted because it's not really an ecosystem. It's a randomized loot table generating resources for you to collect. The appearance of nature, the aesthetic of biodiversity, without any of the fragile balance that makes real ecosystems precious and vulnerable. The museum, where you donate specimens of every bug, fish, and fossil you find, is Animal Crossing's celebration of natural history. Blathers the Owl runs it, offering detailed descriptions of each creature with a mix of scientific fact and personality. The museum in New Horizons is beautifully designed, with different wings for different specimen types, atmospheric lighting, and careful curation. It's genuinely impressive. But it's a museum of an apocalypse, a monument to nature that cannot be lost. Every species exists in infinite numbers, waiting to be caught and donated. There's no conservation needed, no endangered species, no habitats under threat. The museum celebrates biodiversity in a world where diversity cannot be diminished. It's nature appreciation without any of the urgency that makes conservation meaningful. You're preserving things that cannot be destroyed, documenting populations that cannot decline. The fossils you dig up daily are particularly interesting. These are remnants of prehistoric creatures, evidence of deep time, of species that once lived and then vanished. In the real world, fossils remind us of extinction, of how life is temporary, of how entire worlds can pass away and leave only traces. But in Animal Crossing, fossils are collectibles, items to find and donate, stripped of their existential weight. They're evidence of an apocalypse that happened outside this world, in some prehistory that doesn't connect to the eternal present you inhabit. Even the night sky participates in this sanitized nature. Shooting stars appear during meteor showers, and you can wish on them for special fragments that wash up on your beach the next day. It's a lovely mechanic, tying earthly rewards to celestial events. But the meteor showers are scheduled, scripted events announced by your villagers and NPCs. They're not actual astronomical phenomena, but programmed decorations. The cosmos itself has been tamed, made reliable, stripped of its vastness and indifference. This is perhaps the deepest expression of the apocalypse, a world where nature has been so thoroughly domesticated that it no longer resembles nature at all, where the wild has become garden, where the dangerous has become safe, where the indifferent has become accommodating. Animal Crossing gives us nature as it appears in fairy tales, in pastoral paintings, in our safest fantasies. Nature that provides without demanding, that decorates without threatening, that exists for our pleasure without asserting any needs of its own. And we accept this trade willingly, because real nature is difficult and dangerous and demands respect. Real nature can hurt us, can destroy what we've built, can remind us of our smallness and mortality. Animal Crossing. Nature asks nothing of us except that we interact with it. Its nature as service industry, always available, always polite, always subordinate to our desires. The apocalypse has conquered not just human society, but the natural world itself. And in doing so, it's revealed something uncomfortable. Our fantasy nature, the nature we actually want to interact with, is nature that's already dead. We don't want wilderness, we want gardens. We don't want ecosystems, we want decorations. We don't want the risk and beauty and terror of real nature. We want its appearance without its essence, its aesthetic without its power. Animal Crossing gives us exactly that, and we call it paradise. The currency of nothing. Every economy tells a story about what a society values, what it considers scarce, what it will trade, and what it will protect. The economy of Animal Crossing tells a story too, but it's a story of an apocalypse so complete that value itself has become meaningless. Let's examine the currency that circulates through this world and ask what it reveals about a place where nothing can truly be bought or sold because nothing truly exists. Bells are the currency of Animal Crossing, round golden coins with a bell symbol stamped on them. You earn them by selling items to shops, finding them in trees or rocks, receiving them as gifts. You spend them on furniture, clothing, house upgrades, and various services. Bells flow through your virtual wallet in the thousands and millions, creating a sense of economic activity, of wealth accumulation, of financial progression. But what are bells actually worth? We've touched on this question before, but it's worth exploring more deeply. Bells can purchase items, but those items serve no function beyond aesthetics. You don't need a bed to sleep, don't need a kitchen to eat, don't need a chair to sit. Every purchase is decorative, optional, reversible. You can sell an item back and receive bells, then use those bells to buy something else, on and on, in an endless cycle that produces nothing. Real currency represents stored labor or resources. A dollar can buy bread because someone grew wheat, someone milled flour, someone baked the bread. Currency is the intermediary that allows these different forms of labor to be exchanged. But bells in Animal Crossing don't represent labor because nothing in this world requires labor in any meaningful sense. You catch a fish by pressing a button at the right time. You shake a tree by pressing a button. These actions require no skill, no training, no real effort. They're procedures you execute, not labor you perform. Some fish and bugs sell for more bells than others. A coelacanth sells for 15,000 bells, while a sea bass sells for 400. This creates apparent value hierarchy. But why is a coelacanth worth more? In the real world, rare things are expensive because scarcity creates competition. But in Animal Crossing, a coelacanth isn't truly scarce. It appears rarely, yes, but the game will spawn infinite coelacanths over time. You could catch 100 of them if you wanted. The rarity is artificial, a game mechanic rather than actual scarcity. The same applies to every expensive item. The crown sold by the Able sisters costs over 1,000,000 bells. But why? It's not rare. It appears predictably in the shop rotation. It's not particularly beautiful. It's just a golden crown. It's not useful. It's a hat. Its value is arbitrary, a number assigned by the developers to create a long-term goal for players. It's expensive because the game says it's expensive, not because of any quality inherent to the item itself. This is currency in a post-scarcity world, which is to say, it's not really currency at all. It's points, it's score. It's a way of tracking your engagement with various game systems, a measurement of time spent rather than value created. Bells might as well be replaced with any other number, any other label, and nothing would change. They're meaningful only within the game's internal logic, and that logic is circular. Things cost bells because they cost bells. The stock market, Animal Crossing's stock market simulator, provides the clearest view into the economy's emptiness. Every Sunday, Daisy May sells turnips at fluctuating prices, typically between 90 and 110 bells each. Throughout the week, Nook's Cranny will buy turnips at prices that change twice daily, potentially reaching 600 bells or dropping to 50. Players can visit online communities to find islands with high prices, traveling to sell their turnips for massive profits. This seems like genuine economic activity. You buy low, sell high, take on risk for potential reward. But examine what's actually happening. The turnip prices aren't driven by supply and demand, by other players' actions, by any economic fundamentals. They're random number generation following preset patterns. The game rolls a dice each week, assigns your island one of several price pattern types, and generates prices accordingly. You're not participating in a market. You're gambling on RNG. And what happens when you win this gamble? When you sell turnips for 10 times what you paid? You get millions of bells, and those bells buy decorative items. The profit has no substance, purchases nothing real, changes nothing fundamental. You've converted time spent into higher numbers in a database. Congratulations. The apocalypse rewards your effort with rewards that don't matter. Tom Nook's role as capitalist overlord has become a meme in the community. Players joke about being in debt to a raccoon, technically a tanuki, about working to pay off loans, about the crushing weight of mortgage payments. But this framing, while amusing, misunderstands the situation. Tom Nook isn't a predatory lender. He's not exploiting you. He can't exploit you because exploitation requires power, imbalance, and consequence, neither of which exist here. Tom Nook offers you housing at interest-free loans with no payment schedule or collection mechanism. If he were a real capitalist, he'd be a terrible one. He extends infinite credit with no risk assessment, accepts whatever payment schedule you prefer, including never, and remains cheerful and helpful regardless of your debt status. He's not a capitalist. He's a game mechanic disguised as one, a friendly gate between you and the next tier of storage space. The entire economy runs this way. Systems that look like capitalism, that use capitalism's language and aesthetics, but operate without any of its actual mechanisms. Shops have limited inventories that rotate daily, creating artificial scarcity. But you can buy from multiple shops by visiting other players' islands, or time travel to access different inventory days. The scarcity is optional, enforced only by your willingness to play within artificial constraints. Hot items at Nook's Cranny offer double sell prices, supposedly representing market demand. But demand from whom? There are no other economic actors. The villagers don't buy items from the shop, don't compete with you for resources, don't participate in the economy beyond occasionally asking to buy items from you at prices you can reject. The demand is fictional, a story the game tells to justify giving you more bells for certain items on certain days. Red the Fox, a traveling merchant who sells art and furniture, is literally a con artist. He sells forgeries mixed with genuine pieces, and you need to identify the real from the fake before purchasing. This seems like it should create genuine economic risk. Buy a forgery, and you've wasted bells on something worthless. But forgeries can still be displayed in your home as decoration. They're functionally identical to real art for any purpose except museum donation. The value of real art is purely symbolic, a checkmark in your museum collection rather than anything substantive. Kicks the Skunk sells shoes and bags. The Able Sisters sell clothing. Nook's Cranny sells furniture and tools. Harv's Island in New Horizons adds Katrina for fortune-telling, Reese and Cyrus for customization, Tortimer for storage. These shops create the appearance of a commercial district, of a functioning retail economy. But they're all just item dispensaries with different cosmetic themes. None of them reflect actual supply chains, production processes, or economic relationships. They exist because game design requires ways to distribute items to players, and shops are a familiar structure for doing so. The one moment of genuine economic consequence in Animal Crossing is tool degradation. Tools break after extended use, requiring you to craft or buy replacements. This creates a resource sink, a reason to gather materials and spend bells continuously. Finally, something that matters. Except, tools are cheap and easy to make. Breaking a tool is at most a minor inconvenience. It doesn't threaten your ability to play, doesn't create meaningful scarcity, doesn't force difficult choices. It's a speed bump, not a barrier. Some players have suggested implementing a genuine economy into Animal Crossing, where resources could be depleted, where villagers would have their own needs and desires, where supply and demand would be real forces. But this would fundamentally change what Animal Crossing is. It would introduce consequence, scarcity, failure. It would make the economy matter, which would mean your actions in that economy could have negative outcomes. The apocalypse would crack, and the developers understand that this crack would destroy the game's core appeal. Because Animal Crossing's economy isn't broken or badly designed, it's perfectly calibrated for its purpose, to provide the aesthetics of economic activity without any of the stress or stakes. It lets you feel productive, lets you work toward goals, lets you accumulate wealth and make purchases, all without any risk of failure or loss. Its economy as therapy, as meditation, as comfortable routine. In a real economy, money flows from those who have less power to those who have more. Rent, bills, debt service, these are extractions that concentrate wealth upward. But in Animal Crossing, bells flow primarily toward you. You accumulate them endlessly. Even your debt to Tom Nook is voluntary, only undertaken when you want more space. The economy isn't exploiting you, it's serving you. It exists purely to give you a framework for feeling accomplished. This is the apocalypse's economic manifestation, a world where currency exists, but nothing has value, where commerce occurs, but nothing is truly traded, where you can be rich or poor, but it doesn't matter either way because wealth and poverty have no actual meaning. You participate in this economy not because you need to, but because participating in economies is something humans do, and Animal Crossing provides the structure for doing so without any of the real consequences that make real economies sources of genuine stress and inequality. And so, you fish, and you catch bugs, and you shake trees, and you sell it all for bells, and you use those bells to buy items, and you arrange those items in your house and on your island, and none of it matters, and all of it matters, because you've decided it matters, and that decision is simultaneously absurd, and the most honest thing about the whole experience. The currency is nothing, but we trade in it anyway, because in the apocalypse, nothing else is available. Special characters, prophets of the loop. If the villagers are residents of Animal Crossing's apocalypse, then the special characters, those unique NPCs who visit weekly or run the village's infrastructure, are its prophets and priests. They understand the loop more completely than anyone else. They've accepted their eternal roles, performing their designated functions with dedication and grace. Examining these characters reveals the apocalypse's inner workings, the machinery behind the curtain that keeps this world spinning in place. KK Slider, the wandering musician dog, performs every Saturday night, arriving at 6 p.m. and playing until midnight. His concerts are traditions in every Animal Crossing game, one of the few reliable weekly events players can count on. KK plays guitar and sings, or howls or hums depending on the song, then gives you a recording of the song he performed. He's based on series composer Kazumi Totaka, and his full name, Totakeke, is derived from Japanese naming conventions applied to Totaka's name. KK represents the artist in the apocalypse. He's a traveling Gniade musician who appears to have genuine passion for his craft. He speaks in laid-back, hippie-influenced language, calling things groovy and far out. He claims his music wants to be free, that he gives away recordings because industry fat cats try to put prices on art, but art should be for everyone. In later games, his songs can be purchased, but he says he donates those earnings to the kids, preferring to make bells through fishing. This characterization creates the image of an authentic artist, someone driven by love of music rather than commerce. But examine KK more closely, and the apocalypse reveals itself. He's been performing the same songs for over 2 decades. By New Horizons, he has 110 songs in his repertoire, and while that's impressive, it means he's been performing essentially the same concert every Saturday night for 20 years. He's trapped in his loop just like everyone else, traveling to different towns and islands, but always arriving on schedule, always playing his guitar, always giving away the same recordings. His claim that his music wants to be free takes on darker meaning in this context. The music is free because it cannot be otherwise. It's not a choice, but a condition of his existence. He's not choosing to give away recordings. He's compelled by his nature as an NPC to do so. His anti-commercial stance isn't rebellion. It's programming dressed as philosophy. And yet, KK might be the most self-aware character in the entire game. He speaks about industry fat cats in a world that has no music industry, no record labels, no concert venues beyond the public spaces he performs in. He references a larger world beyond the village, one where music is commercialized and artists struggle. But that world doesn't exist within Animal Crossing. He's referencing our world, the real one, talking about real industry problems while trapped in a fake one. He's a prophet speaking truths about a reality his listeners inhabit while he himself is locked out of it. His signature song, KK Song, is actually Totaka's song, a hidden musical Easter egg Kazumi Totaka has placed in multiple games he's worked on. This metatextual element makes KK simultaneously a character within the game and a reference to the game's creation. He exists on the boundary between the fiction and its construction, a liminal figure who gestures toward the artifice while remaining trapped within it. Isabelle, introduced in New Leaf and becoming the series' most recognizable character alongside Tom Nook, serves as your secretary and assistant. She's a Shih Tzu dog with a cheerful demeanor, always ready to help, always supportive, always positive. In New Leaf, she helps you manage mayoral duties. In New Horizons, she handles daily announcements and administrative tasks, narrating the morning news broadcast to your island. Isabelle is efficiency and service personified. She never complains about her workload, never takes vacations, never asks for raises or time off. She exists purely to assist you, to make your administrative tasks easier, to ensure you're informed about events and visitors. She's the perfect employee in the most unsettling sense, completely devoted, absolutely uncomplaining, her entire existence defined by service to your goals. Her morning announcements in New Horizons have become mimetic for their mundane quality. She'll announce major events when they occur, but most days she has nothing important to report and instead talks about her personal life, her TV watching habits, her lost socks. These announcements are charming in their slice-of-life quality, but they also reveal the emptiness of her existence. Between actual events, she has nothing to do, nothing to report, so she fills the air with pleasant nothings because that's her function. She represents the apocalypse's service industry, the workers who maintain the world's infrastructure without questioning why it needs maintaining. She's content in her role, not because it fulfills her, but because she cannot conceive of fulfillment or its absence. She exists to serve, so she serves, and finds that sufficient because she has no framework for evaluating whether it should be. Blathers, the owl who runs the museum, is deeply knowledgeable about natural history but terrified of bugs. This contradiction is played for comedy, an entomologist who recoils in horror when you donate a spider or cockroach. His fear humanizes him, makes him relatable, but it also raises questions. Why is someone afraid of bugs running a museum that requires collecting bugs? Why hasn't he overcome this fear after years or decades of doing this job? The answer is that Blathers cannot overcome his fear because it's not a fear, but a characteristic, a fixed trait defining his personality. He's been afraid of bugs since the first game and will remain afraid of bugs forever. Character growth would require change, and change would require time having genuine weight. Blathers is trapped in his contradiction, forever accepting bug donations while forever being disgusted by them, unable to evolve or adapt. His detailed descriptions of every species you donate demonstrate extensive knowledge. He'll tell you about fish migration patterns, insect life cycles, fossil dating methods. But this knowledge exists in a void. There's no scientific community to share it with, no papers to publish, no conferences to attend. He's an expert for the sake of being an expert, accumulating and sharing knowledge that has no application beyond informing the player. He's a librarian in a library with one visitor, maintaining collections that will never be studied by anyone except that visitor and himself. Gulliver and Gullivar, the seagull who washes up on your beach unconscious, requiring you to find his communicator parts before he can call for rescue, visits regularly and always suffers the same problem. He's a sailor or pirate, depending on which version appears, who's apparently terrible at his job, constantly getting shipwrecked or passing out drunk on beaches. Each time you help him, he thanks you, promises to remember you, then promptly returns several weeks later in exactly the same predicament, having forgotten everything. This is the loop made explicit. Gulliver cannot learn from his mistakes because learning would be change. He washes up on your beach, you help him, he leaves. Next time he appears, he has no memory of your previous help. He's Sisyphus, without the awareness that he's pushing the same rock up the same hill. He's trapped in an eternal cycle of needing rescue, but the cycle is so complete he doesn't even recognize it as a cycle. Wisp the ghost appears at night, panicking because he's lost his spirit pieces and needs your help collecting them. Once you do, he offers rewards, then floats away. The next time you encounter him, he's lost his spirit pieces again and doesn't remember you helped him before. Like Gulliver, he's stuck in a loop of losing, being helped, losing again, with no memory to connect these events into a coherent experience. These characters represent the apocalypse's various aspects. KK is the artist trapped in eternal performance. Isabelle is the worker whose service defines her existence. Blathers is the scholar whose expertise has no application. Gulliver and Wisp are memory itself failing, the inability to learn or grow made manifest. Celeste, Blathers' sister, appears during meteor showers to teach you DIY recipes for star-themed items and share facts about astronomy. She speaks about constellations and cosmic phenomena with genuine wonder. But the cosmos she describes exists outside Animal Crossing. The actual sky in the game is a dome of animated sprites, not a universe. She's teaching you about a reality she'll never experience, describing a vastness she can never access. She's a prophet of a world beyond the world, standing on the beach of a small island and gesturing toward infinity she cannot reach. These special characters are more developed than the regular villagers. They have unique designs, specific roles, actual names that matter. But this development only makes their imprisonment more apparent. They're aware enough to seem like individuals, but constrained enough to be trapped. They're the apocalypse's middle management, running the systems that keep everything flowing smoothly, ensuring the loops continue forever. And they seem content? KK smiles while he plays. Isabelle is cheerful in her announcements. Blathers, despite his bug fear, speaks passionately about the museum's mission. Celeste gazes at stars with wonder. They've achieved something like peace within their circumstances. Or perhaps they've achieved something darker, the inability to recognize their circumstances as circumstances. They're content because discontent requires comparison, the ability to imagine alternatives. And alternatives don't exist in the apocalypse. There's only the loop. Their place within it, forever. The symbolism of islands. When New Horizons shifted Animal Crossing's setting from village to island, it wasn't merely a cosmetic change. Islands are symbolically loaded spaces, representing isolation and freedom simultaneously, prison and paradise depending on perspective. By placing us on a deserted island, New Horizons made the apocalypse's geography explicit. We're trapped on a small piece of land surrounded by water we cannot truly cross, building our perfect world in a space that cannot escape from itself. The deserted island concept taps into deep cultural narratives: Robinson Crusoe, Castaway, Lost, Gilligan's Island. These stories use islands to explore what happens when people are removed from civilization's support structures. Islands become laboratories for examining human nature, places where social contracts can be renegotiated or dissolved, where survivors must create new worlds from limited resources. But New Horizons subverts these narratives. Traditional island stories are about survival, about the struggle to endure with insufficient resources, about the constant risk of failure. Animal Crossing's deserted island has no survival element. You arrive with tools and immediate support from Tom Nook. Resources are infinite. There's no risk of starvation, dehydration, exposure to elements. The deserted island comes pre-packaged with infrastructure and immediate connectivity to a larger world through Dodo Airlines. This is a post-apocalyptic island that's already been made safe, a wilderness that's already been prepared for your arrival. You're not surviving. You're developing. You're not struggling against nature. You're landscaping. The island isn't a challenge, but a canvas, a blank space for you to impose your will upon. The island's isolation is similarly compromised. Yes, you're surrounded by ocean. Yes, your island is physically separate from other islands. But through Dodo Airlines, you can visit other islands instantly. Through online play, you can invite visitors just as quickly. The isolation is aesthetic rather than actual. You're alone by choice, able to summon company whenever desired. This is isolation as luxury, as the ability to control your social exposure rather than isolation as genuine loneliness or separation. Real islands impose constraints, limited land area forces, difficult choices about resource allocation, limited fresh water, limited building space, limited paths for expansion. But Animal Crossing islands can be terraformed extensively. You can raise and lower terrain, create and destroy water features, reshape the land to your specifications. The island resists almost nothing. The ocean is your only true boundary, and even that's permeable through travel. This creates an interesting inversion of traditional island narratives. Usually, the island changes the person. The castaway must adapt, must learn new skills, must become someone different to survive. But in Animal Crossing, the person changes the island. You adapt it to your vision rather than adapting yourself to its constraints. You're not shaped by isolation. You shape isolation into whatever you want it to be. The mystery islands you can visit using Nook Miles tickets add another layer to this symbolism. These are small, randomly generated islands offering resources and occasionally hosting villagers you can invite to your island. They're disposable spaces, serving a single visit, then disappearing from access forever. You extract what you want, then leave, never to return. These mystery islands represent an extractive relationship with the world. They exist purely to be harvested, to provide resources for your main island's development. There's no consideration of sustainability because these islands aren't sustainable by design. They're temporary resource nodes, generated on demand, discarded after use. This is colonialism in miniature, the attitude that spaces exist primarily for what can be taken from them rather than having value in themselves. Your main island, by contrast, is permanent. It's the space you're developing, the place you've invested time and effort into improving. But this permanence is also the trap. You cannot leave your island except temporarily. You cannot move to a new island without deleting your save data and starting completely over, losing everything you've built. The island becomes a prison precisely because you've invested so much into it. The more you develop, the more trapped you become. This mirrors real-world patterns of investment and entrapment. We stay in situations we've invested in, even when they no longer serve us, because walking away feels like losing that investment. Sunk cost fallacy keeps us in dead-end jobs, failing relationships, places we've outgrown. Animal Crossing exploits this same psychology. Your island represents hundreds or thousands of hours of work. Leaving means abandoning all of it. So you stay, continuing to develop, continuing to invest, making the trap stronger. The concept of a getaway package is darkly ironic in this context. Tom Nook advertises the deserted island experience as escape, as vacation, as opportunity to start fresh. But you're not escaping from anything because Animal Crossing's world has nothing to escape from. And you're not going anywhere because the island becomes your permanent residence. The getaway that never ends stops being a vacation and becomes your life. Or rather, it becomes your non-life, your existence in the apocalypse's comfortable stasis. Islands are also useful as symbols because they're comprehensible. You can see the boundaries. You can know the limits. You can theoretically map and master every part of an island given enough time. Contrast this with a mainland, which extends beyond horizon, connecting to other places, suggesting a larger world beyond your immediate experience. Islands are knowable, controllable, finite. They're perfect settings for games because games are bounded systems, and islands physically manifest those boundaries. But this knowability is also a kind of death. Mystery, the unknown, the undiscovered, these are sources of meaning and motivation. When everything can be known, when every corner can be explored, when the boundaries are visible and fixed, possibility dies. Your island becomes a solved puzzle, a system you've mastered, a space with no surprises left to offer. The apocalypse is complete when the map is filled in. New Horizons islands can be rated on a scale from 1 to 5 stars, determined by an algorithm evaluating various factors: furniture placed, flowers planted, weeds removed, trees planted, villagers housed. Achieving 5 stars unlocks certain rewards, particularly the golden watering can DIY recipe. The rating system gamifies development, giving you a metric to work toward, a goal to achieve. But the rating is arbitrary. A 5-star island isn't objectively better than a 3-star island. It's just more cluttered, more developed, more aligned with the algorithm's preferences. The rating measures quantity over quality, items placed over aesthetic vision. You can achieve 5 stars through thoughtless density, packing items everywhere, or through careful design. The system doesn't distinguish. This rating system is the apocalypse's method of providing purpose where none exists organically. The game needs to give you goals, needs to make you feel like you're working towards something. So it creates an arbitrary metric and pretends achieving it matters. And we accept this because we need goals, need progression, need to feel like our time is building towards something. The apocalypse gives us the structure of purpose without its substance. Islands in literature often represent the mind, internal psychological spaces separated from the world's chaos. The island is where the self encounters itself, where internal conflicts play out in isolation. Animal Crossing's islands function this way too. They're projections of your aesthetic preferences, your organizational systems, your design sensibilities. They're external manifestations of internal states, but they're also traps for that internal state. Once you've externalized yourself onto the island, you're locked in dialogue with your own projection. You're decorating a reflection of yourself, arranging and rearranging the same elements, trying to perfect something that can never be perfected because it's not reaching toward an external standard, but only expressing your own constantly shifting preferences. The apocalypse on the island is complete. You're isolated with yourself, surrounding yourself with reflections of your own taste, maintained by automated residents who exist only to affirm your choices, in a space that cannot be truly left, working toward goals that mean nothing beyond the game's internal logic. It's solipsism made geography. It's your mind made island. And like your mind, you can never really escape it. You can only decorate it differently and call that progress. Conclusion: living in the quiet end. We've walked through Animal Crossing's apocalypse together, examining its timeless architecture, its looping inhabitants, its stakeless systems, its sanitized nature, its meaningless currency, its prophetic characters, and its symbolic islands. We've seen how this world presents itself as paradise while operating as prison, how it offers freedom while enforcing constraint, how it promises life while delivering stasis. The question that remains is the most important one. Why does this appeal to us? What does our love of this apocalypse reveal about us? The answer begins with understanding what we're escaping when we enter Animal Crossing. The real world is defined by consequence. Every action creates ripples that extend beyond our control or comprehension. Time moves forward irreversibly. Choices, once made, cannot be unmade. Relationships can be damaged beyond repair. Resources, once consumed, are gone. Death waits at the end of every life, the ultimate consequence from which no one escapes. This weight of consequence is exhausting. Modern life particularly so, with its complex interconnections, its global implications of local actions, its constant bombardment of crises we can't solve but feel responsible for awareness of. Climate change, inequality, political chaos, pandemic disease, the slow unraveling of systems we depend on but can't control. We live in an age defined by the awareness of consequences we're powerless to prevent. Animal Crossing offers respite from this. Enter its world, and consequence evaporates. Time still passes, but becomes reversible. Choices can always be reconsidered. Nothing can be permanently damaged. Resources are infinite. Death doesn't exist. The weight lifts. You can breathe. You can relax. This is the appeal, and it's legitimate. We need spaces where we can rest from consequences' grinding pressure. But here's where the apocalypse's true nature reveals itself. What we're calling respite is actually anesthesia. We're not resting to gather strength for re-engagement with the real world. We're numbing ourselves to its demands. Animal Crossing doesn't help us deal with consequence. It helps us avoid thinking about it. The apocalypse is comfortable because it lets us pretend consequence isn't real, isn't important, doesn't matter. And the more time we spend in this comfort, the harder returning to the real world becomes. Every hour in Animal Crossing is an hour not spent engaging with genuine stakes. Every day building your island is a day not building anything that lasts. The game is designed to be played daily, to become routine, to be a habit you maintain indefinitely. It rewards consistency with minor advantages. Daily fossils, money trees, visitors who only appear certain days. It trains you to prioritize its world over the real one. This isn't to say Animal Crossing is evil or that playing it is wrong. It's to say we need to be honest about what we're choosing when we choose it. We're choosing comfort over growth, aesthetic over substance, the appearance of life over life itself. And sometimes, maybe often, that's the right choice. We're not obligated to always be growing, struggling, engaging with heavy matters. Rest is necessary. Pleasure has value. Comfort isn't inherently corrupt. But we should recognize the apocalypse for what it is. Animal Crossing isn't neutral entertainment. It's a specific vision of how a world without stakes might function, and it reveals our desire for such a world. When millions of people retreat to these islands, especially during times of real-world crisis, it demonstrates something profound about what we actually want versus what we claim we want. We say we want our actions to matter, want to make a difference, want to engage meaningfully with the world. But when offered the choice, many of us choose the opposite. We choose a world where nothing we do matters, because at least there, we can't fail. We can't make things worse. We can't be blamed for outcomes beyond our control. The apocalypse is seductive precisely because it absolves us of responsibility by removing the possibility of consequence. The villagers are perhaps the game's most honest element. They cannot grow, learn, or remember because those abilities would require them to be more than decorations. They exist in eternal present, content with their loops, because the game needs inhabitants who won't challenge us, won't expect growth from us, won't hold us accountable. They're perfect companions for the apocalypse, cheerful, forgiving, fundamentally incapable of judgment. And we project onto them anyway. We develop favorite villagers, imagine relationships with them, mourn when they leave. We're so starved for connection that we'll take even the simulation of it, even when we know intellectually that nothing's there. This isn't pathetic, it's human. We're social creatures who need connection, and when genuine connection is difficult, dangerous, or exhausting, we'll accept facsimiles. The apocalypse provides those facsimiles and asks nothing in return. The game's design is brilliant precisely because it understands all of this. The developers aren't naive. They've created a careful system that provides the aesthetics of life without life's dangers, that simulates meaning without requiring genuine engagement, that offers the comfort of routine without the risk of stagnation, because stagnation has been reframed as stability. Animal Crossing succeeds by giving us exactly what we actually want, not what we think we should want. But there's a cost to this success, and the cost is implicit. Every hour in Animal Crossing is an hour not spent on things that could actually change. Not just change in the world, but change in yourself. Growth requires resistance, requires encountering things you can't easily overcome, requires risk and potential failure. Animal Crossing removes all of that, and in doing so, removes the possibility of genuine growth. You can play it for years and remain exactly who you were when you started, because it demands nothing of you except time. The apocalypse isn't punishment, it's reward. It's the world arranging itself around your comfort, bending to your will, asking nothing in return except your continued attention. And that attention is what we're really trading. Our time, our awareness, our presence. We give Animal Crossing these things, and it gives us a comfortable lie in return. That we can exist without consequence, that our actions don't need to matter, that it's okay to stop trying because trying is too hard, and rest is here, waiting, forever. Some players have recognized this and responded by setting challenges, creating difficulty where none exists naturally. Speedrunning museum completion, earning specific bell amounts within time limits, building with self-imposed restrictions. These players are trying to inject stakes into a stakeless world, to create consequence where none exists. It's admirable and also sad, because it demonstrates the need humans have for challenge, for growth, for meaningful difficulty. We need those things, and when a system doesn't provide them, we try to create them ourselves, even when doing so is swimming against the current of the system's entire design. The pandemic amplified Animal Crossing's success because it occurred during a moment when consequence was overwhelming. People were dying, economies were collapsing, normal life was suspended, uncertainty reigned. In that context, a gentle island where tomorrow was guaranteed, where nothing could truly go wrong, where you had perfect control over at least one small space, became not just entertaining, but necessary. Animal Crossing was therapy disguised as a game, anesthesia for a wounded world. But as the acute phase of crisis has passed, as we've adapted to new normals and resumed more typical patterns, Animal Crossing's player base has declined. Not because the game got worse, but because the need it served became less acute. When real life becomes livable again, when consequence becomes manageable rather than overwhelming, the apocalypse's appeal diminishes. We can handle real stakes again, so we don't need fake ones. This reveals something hopeful. Our desire for the apocalypse isn't absolute. We retreat to it when needed, when the real world becomes too much. But we can emerge from it too, can return to genuine stakes and real consequences when we've rested enough to handle them. Animal Crossing is a shelter, not a home. Or at least it shouldn't be a home, though for some players it has become one, which raises questions about what makes the real world so unlivable that permanent retreat becomes preferable. The game will continue existing, will continue receiving players new and returning, will continue offering its comfortable apocalypse to anyone who needs it, and that's okay. The apocalypse isn't going away. Consequence isn't becoming easier. The appeal of a stakeless world will remain. Animal Crossing will always be there, waiting patiently with its gentle music and friendly villagers and infinite tomorrows. The question isn't whether we should visit this apocalypse. The question is whether we know why we're visiting, whether we're honest with ourselves about what we're choosing and what we're avoiding. The question is whether we recognize the cage for what it is, even as we appreciate its comfort. The question is whether we can enjoy the shelter without forgetting it's not the world, without confusing the map for the territory, without losing ourselves so completely in the simulation that we forget what's real. Because something is real. Outside the game, beyond the screen, in the world where consequences cascade and time moves forward irreversibly, where relationships can be damaged and resources can be depleted and choices matter because they can't be undone. That world is harder. That world is often cruel. That world will break your heart and break it again. But that world is also where genuine meaning exists, where actions have weight, where connection is possible precisely because loss is possible, where life matters because death waits at its end. Animal Crossing can't give you that. It can only give you its opposite, a comfortable simulation where nothing matters because nothing can matter, where time is a costume and consequence is performance. And every day is the same perfect day forever. That's the apocalypse. That's the end of the world, not with bang or whimper, but with gentle music and the rustling of leaves and the knowledge that tomorrow will be exactly like today, and the next day exactly like tomorrow. On and on into an eternity you can pause but never truly stop. We visit this apocalypse because sometimes we need to. Because sometimes the weight of genuine consequence becomes too much, and we need a place to set it down. That's okay. That's human. Rest is necessary. But rest isn't life. The apocalypse isn't home. And somewhere in the back of our minds, playing these games we love, we know this. We know that the island isn't real, that the villagers aren't real, that the bells and the items and the 5-star ratings aren't real. We know we're spending hours building something that will vanish the moment we close the game, that exists nowhere except in a computer's memory. We know all of this, and we play anyway. Because knowing the apocalypse is comfortable doesn't make it less comfortable. And sometimes, maybe most times, comfort is exactly what we need. The trap is forgetting that comfort isn't everything, that peace without stakes isn't really peace, but anesthesia, that a world without consequence is a world without meaning. So we play. We build our islands. We befriend our villagers. We catch our fish. We plant our flowers. We do all the things Animal Crossing asks of us, knowing they mean nothing, choosing to pretend they mean something, participating willingly in the apocalypse's gentle lie. And when we've rested enough, when we've recharged in this consequence-free space, we save our game, set down our controllers, and return to the world that matters. The world where our actions have weight, where time cannot be reset, where loss is real, and therefore love is real, where the end will eventually come, but hasn't come yet, so we continue, carrying what we've learned and unlearned, what we've built and destroyed, what we've found and lost, forward into whatever time remains. The apocalypse of Animal Crossing is mesmerizing because it's everything we think we want: eternal, comfortable, controllable, safe. But it's also everything we actually fear: meaningless, empty, isolated, unchanging. It's paradise and prison simultaneously, the best and worst possible world, depending on what we're hoping to find there. And that duality, that tension between comfort and emptiness, between freedom and constraint, between the end of consequence and the end of meaning, is what makes it so powerful, so appealing, so ultimately hollow. We need the apocalypse, sometimes, in small doses, as relief from the overwhelming weight of genuine consequence. But we need the real world more, need its stakes and dangers and possibilities, need its capacity to hurt us, because that's also its capacity to move us, to change us, to allow us to become something more than we are. The apocalypse offers stasis. The real world offers growth. And growth, however painful, is what makes us human. So, visit your island, water your flowers, pay off your loans, catch your fish, build your perfect paradise, rest in the apocalypse's gentle embrace. But remember that you're resting, not living. Remember that comfort isn't purpose. Remember that the world without consequence is also the world without meaning. And when you've rested enough, when the apocalypse has given you what you need from it, step back into the world that matters. Step back into time that moves forward, into choices that cannot be undone, into a life that will end and is therefore precious. The apocalypse will wait. It's patient. It has nothing but time. It will be there when you need it again, as you probably will, as we all do, because consequence is heavy and rest is necessary. But it will also let you go when you're ready to leave, because the apocalypse knows its place. It's shelter, not destination. It's respite, not resolution. It's the quiet end of the world, and the quiet end is always there, waiting just beyond the horizon, ready to welcome you home whenever home becomes too difficult. But it's not home. Remember that. No matter how comfortable it becomes, no matter how much time you spend there, no matter how perfect you make your island, it's not home. Home is where stakes matter. Home is where consequences flow. Home is where time has teeth and choice has weight, and tomorrow is never guaranteed. Home is hard. Home will hurt you. Home will break you. But home is real. And in the end, despite everything, that's what matters most. If you've enjoyed drifting through this story tonight, consider subscribing for more quiet journeys through Nintendo's worlds.